data science is a very poorly defined career path, I want to say. And it's both a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So at the time, for me, it was a bad thing because I had this idea of my mind of what a data scientist should be doing and how they should behave and really ticking boxes. And I was feeling like I wasn't ticking the boxes. And what happened is I started, again, this reflection of, okay, what does it mean for me, Karen, to be a data scientist?
Today's episode of the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Karen Jean-Francois. As an analytics manager, Karen is passionate about how data science and analytics can support business and help them to better understand their customers. While she finds digging into data fun, she believes that it comes with responsibility, and her uncompromising focus on data integrity enables her to build trust and strong relationships with stakeholders. Most of all, she strives to help others to craft their own path to personal and professional fulfillment. She believes that focusing on personal development and having access to role models is key to having a successful career, no matter what your definition of success is. This is why she created the Women in Data podcast in partnership with Women in Data UK. This resulted in industry recognition as a 20 in Data and Technology in 2020, which awards visible and accessible female role models for the next generations of data professionals. In this episode, we talk about how Karen was able to leverage her strengths as an introvert to become a more successful manager, how she almost left the field for baking, and how she found her voice and other like-minded individuals through podcasting. Karen, thank you so much for coming on the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast today. We've talked, we've been on a panel together, and after hearing you speak there, I just had to have you on the show. It's always fun to interview another podcaster, as well as someone else in the data domain. So again, thank you for coming on. And how are you doing today?
I am really great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here and chatting with you. I loved our conversation from last time, and I'm looking forward to carry on with that on the podcast.
Incredible stuff. Well, so first, I really want to get the audience to know you better and hear a little bit about your story. And then I also really want to dive into your podcast, hear the origin story, and things like that for that. So starting out, how did you first get interested in data and technology?
That was I don't think I actually got interested into data and technology. I got interested into statistics, and data felt like the way forward. So I did a master's in applied statistics and mathematics, and it was just, oh, what am I going to do with that? And data was there. And I said, okay, let me try that. And I feel like it's when really I got properly to start working with data that I realized, okay, this is great. I want to keep doing that. Yeah, I've been there for a while now.
Incredible. And where did that initial interest in the math and statistics come from? Was that a pivotal moment, or was that something that you developed over time?
I feel like I was always interested in math. My granddad, when I was growing up, was my role model, and he used to be a math teacher. So I come from a very tiny island in the Caribbean called Guadeloupe. And back home, you know, when your parents work, it's very easy for them to end up stuck in traffic and not being able to pick you up at school. So my granddad was taking us to school and then back, and he was making sure we were doing our homework. And with him helping me with that and with the math, I was thinking, I want to be like you. I want to be a math teacher. And that's how my journey into math started. That plus the fact that you would have guessed by my accent, I am French. My island is French. And I hated studying French. So it was, what am I going to do, math or French? I will do math. And yeah, so I studied math all the way to my master's. Something that's very interesting there is I wanted to be a teacher, but there are not that many teaching jobs on my island. As I said, it's very small, so it's 400,000 people, probably much less now. And the narrative I had around me was that you're studying math, you want to do a master's in mathematics, this is useless because with math, you can only teach and there are no jobs. So you're going to study up to a master's for no reason. And I'm glad I didn't listen to these people because at the end of the day, I am not a math teacher. I work in data, and that would not have happened if I hadn't done my master's, because it's during my master's that I discovered data.
That's incredible. And so I'd love to hear, you started on this very small island. What was what happened to get you to go from there to where you are now? How did you decide to move off? What was that process and that consideration like?
Yeah, a lot happened.
We
uh,
don't have to go through all of it, but well,
I
that's what we're
left
here
when
for.
well, let's do it. I will try to give you the interesting version. I left when I was 19, actually. So I left all my family behind and moved to Paris, which is 8,000 kilometers away. So it's an 8 hours and a half flight, and that was quite a big change for me. Um, that said, it's not very uncommon from young people from my island to leave the island to go study abroad. So mainly in France, because we're French, we have a French passport, we get to French university without needing a visa or whatever. And so there are three things that made me leave the island. First, I wanted to discover who I was. So back home, very small community. It feels like there is always someone telling you what you should be doing and who you should be. And I felt like I couldn't really discover who Karen was by staying there. So I wanted a bit of freedom. I wanted to be able to experience and find out what it is that I wanted from life. The other thing was that I wanted to have a better education. So back home, there is one university that covers several of the French islands, and it's a good university, but it's not. I mean, if you go to other universities in France, they're going to tell you, yeah, right, you come from that one, you didn't have a choice, so whatever. So I wanted to be a math teacher, but I wanted to be the best and have a great degree from a great university. So that's another reason why I got on the plane. And the last one was that I was doing athletics and I was competing with the French team of athletics at the time at the European Championships. And back home, again, small island, when I was doing competitions, most of the time it was just me running and trying to beat my time. So trying to run fast when it's just you in a race is very, very difficult to make the times for the championships. So being in Paris meant that I had more competition and I could race with the girls I would race at national and international championships without having to take a really long flight. So that's what made me leave. Moved to Paris, studied there 3 years. So in Paris, in France, you have 3 years of uni and then so bachelor's degree, 3 years, and then 2 years of master's. So I arrived at my third year of university and did the third year and my master's. And that was such a massive cultural shock. Because me being French, I was thinking, okay, there is no difference. But living on a tiny, tiny island in the Caribbean and living in Paris are two completely different things, especially when your family is not around to support you. And I just found myself in this massive city where even if people were speaking the same language as me, culture was completely different. Words sometimes were different. My accent definitely out of place. And it was quite tough the first year. And then I got used to it. And I went to London in 2012, I think, for Christmas with my friends. So I was thinking, okay, let's hop on the Eurostar, go to London and spend Christmas there. That was a bad idea because I don't know if you've been in London, but Christmas is not the time to be in London. It's very cold, very windy. It was raining. So we stayed 4 days, raining the whole four
Oh
days.
no.
Yeah, and on Christmas Day, there are no public transport in London. So we were just trying to make our way around the city in the rain, being very cold with no public transport. But when we arrived back in Paris, and you can ask my friends if you want, I told them, I am moving to London. This is an amazing city. I loved it, even if the weather was crap. And 2
If you
years
like it at
later,
its worst, right, you must like it at its best.
2 years later, I was in London and I've been there for 7 years and a half now.
Incredible. Well, I think that I really admire how you were able to put yourself in these positions that were clearly outside of your comfort zone. And in a lot of those circumstances, there effectively was very few ways to go back to
Yeah.
what it was before. Once you turn on the switch, I think uh, that's scary, but also a very effective way to grow as a person. And I think it's incredible that you identified that, hey, I have to do this in order to grow as a person and find who I am. We talked a lot about this offline, but when you do that in any new situation, it's very easy to have doubts about yourself or to feel this phenomenon that we describe now as imposter syndrome. I think that is a symptom of putting yourself in a new situation almost every single time, where you're
Yeah.
like, hey, this is new to me, everyone else has experience. It could be speaking a language, it could be learning data science, speaking a language that you've spoken for your entire life, but when people speak it differently, they're like, oh, do I belong here?
Yeah.
um, can you talk more about that? And I love to hear about your experience with imposter syndrome, but also how you were able to get past it, or not get past it, but to tackle it head on, because it seems like you've changed places, you've changed cultures, you've changed education levels, whatever it might be, throughout your life. There's a lot of opportunities to face it when you're making large scale changes frequently.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, the imposter syndrome is something that is so important to talk about, because there are studies that show that 70% of people, so no matter the gender, no matter the age, experience the imposter syndrome at least once in their life. And there are some amazing books on that, and also loads of research. So I know
I
Secret
think
Thoughts of Successful Women is one of the book that is a must read on the topic. But as you said, putting myself in situations that were unfamiliar to me definitely exasperated. How do you say that in English?
you nailed it.
Okay, made
Exasperated.
it worse. But it
Exacerbated. Okay.
ex-
There you go.
I'm
There
not
you
going to be able to pronounce that.
go.
But I feel like this is something I've always had with me. So apart from my granddad, no one in my family was a math addict. Before me, no one in my family did a master's. And I've always had this thing saying, what am I doing here? People that have listened to me in the past might know that I did not have a computer before I was 17, 18, and I work in tech. So growing
Oh,
without a computer in the house was a bit of okay, so you have a computer, you know how to code since you were like 8, and I didn't touch a laptop before I was 17. But so all this has put me on the path for a massive imposter syndrome. And something that I've never said before, and I'm saying it now because I feel like this is the space. When I moved to Paris, we've been talking about moving to Paris and the cultural change. I moved to Paris and I remember one of my lecturers, so she was teaching differential equation, which was already quite a tough topic for me. She told me, I don't even know how we got to that point, but she told me, yeah, Karen, you come from the Caribbean. We all know what's the level of education over there. So the good grade you had don't matter. And I kind of let that lead how my studies will be for um, differential equations, people putting limiting beliefs in your head. And so I moved with that, and the fact that doing athletics, I was training 12 hours a week plus competing on weekends. And I was seeing all my peers studying really hard after uni while I was just running back to the track, and I didn't have time to study as much as they did. And I remember you at some point, you did a short video on learning and talking about the environment you're in and what you see people doing, how it impacts the way you learn and how you see yourself. I definitely had that. So I have my teacher telling me I'm not good enough because I come from there. I can see that I don't have as much time to study as the others. That means I'm bad. And I graduated and I started working, and I found myself in this new environment where I had to be on a laptop every single day. That was new. People talk a lot about technology, they talk a lot about gaming, loads of things that I didn't know existed. And this is not a lie. Before my master's, gaming community, did I know that? No. Programming, did I know that? Not really. So I've heard of it. I've done the Hello World thing at uni before, but I had never sat and wrote a proper piece of code. And that was mind-blowing for me. And that set these insecurities. Where they got worse, I want to say, was when I joined Carlytics. So I've been at Carlytics for 4 years and a half now, and I joined Carlytics as the only woman in the team. So our head of data told me when recruiting, Karen, if you join us, you're going to be the only woman in the team. Is that a problem? And I said, no, why would it be a problem? I've studied mathematics. It was male dominated already. I've done athletics. I've been around a lot of males. No problems at all. But I hadn't realized that in the business environment, it was a bit different. So you have, I'm an introvert also. So putting myself in this situation where I was working with some very technical people, although I had worked, so this was not my first job in data, it's my fourth job in data, but I hadn't found myself in the same room as people that were that technical. And I was thinking, okay, so I'm a bit different, on the weekend you go and do Kaggle competitions and look for data things, and then me, I bake and I go running. So there is a bit of a difference here, and I couldn't identify to anyone in my team or any of the leaders in the company. And I was also struggling to make my voice heard in meetings. So I felt like everybody had a better opinion than me. I shouldn't be talking. And me being an introvert, I tend to sit back and listen and reflect. And it takes me a bit of time to get the reflection out through my mouth. But by the time that this was happening, everybody had moved to a different topic. And it was quite hard for me. And that's when things went downhill. So I felt like I shouldn't be in data. I mean, what am I doing here? I don't know anything about technology. Everybody is much more technical than I am. And already people told me I wasn't good enough. So maybe I should try something else. And I remember a Saturday getting up, telling my partner, I'm going to be a baker. And I need to find out if baking is something I would like doing. So we have a French patisserie not far from our house. I walked there and I feel like this can only happen in London. Asked to see the chef, said, hey, I never studied baking, but I do bake quite a lot at home. Can I come work with you on Saturdays and see if this is a job I would like? And he said yes. So for 2-3 months, I went on Saturdays, like 4 a.m. to the bakery. And then I was working with them, slicing cakes, glazing tarts, making genoise. My baking skills are much better now, but I realized this is not what I want to do. I realized even if I felt a bit out of place, data is something I love. I love digging into the data, finding interesting trends, and I discovered that something I really like is advising people on the best strategy for their insights and how to use their data. And how I did that was through mentoring. So I met a lot of women, particularly for coffee, and they helped me understand that, okay, being different is okay, and it's actually a strength. So you shouldn't feel bad about being different. You should embrace it and see where your differences were making you stronger than the others. So an advice I got that was invaluable came from Victoria Pike. She told me, Karen, you focus too much on your weaknesses. You should focus on your strengths. And I feel like this is an advice that every data professional should get, because the industry moves so fast and we're always, trying to learn the newest thing and playing this catch-up game. And it feels like by focusing so much on learning the new things, the thing you don't know, means that you could spend a lot of time focusing on your weaknesses rather than playing by your strengths. So identifying what my strengths were, how I could apply them at work, and what that would mean for the company was a game changer for me. And from being completely invisible and feeling inadequate, I became a role model to many women in the field. I was awarded 20 in data and technology last year, which I never thought would happen. And I would have never think this would have been a thing for me. And even I'm still at the same company, and even that the way I relate to other people in the team and with the company has changed quite a lot, and with our clients as well. So while before I was just doing my work being hidden behind my screen, now I'm very active in conversations, advising on, I mean, I'm a manager now. uh, it's completely different, and it feels like I am where I should have been. And this is because I was able to really ask this question of, well, first of all, admitting that there was something wrong, because you can say there is something wrong and just drop out of the field or not do anything about it and burn out. But admitting to people that there was something wrong and I needed help was really a game changer for me, as well as reading Secret Thoughts of Successful Women.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP. HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z4 workstation. I really love that the Z line can come standard with Linux, and they also can be configured with the data science software stack. With the software stack, you can get right into the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show. Incredible. I'll definitely be sure to link that book below as well.
Yeah.
I loved that story of overcoming the adversity you face and those feelings, and the advice that you were given was incredible. And I think when we're framing things in terms of our strengths or the positives, that is one of the keys to controlling imposter syndrome. So at least for me, I still feel imposter syndrome all the time. But when I feel it, I know that that is what exactly am I feeling, right? I'm feeling that I'm uncomfortable. I know that I only grow when I'm in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
So it's like a warning light that is a good warning, right? It's showing me that, hey, I must be in the right place because I'm uncomfortable. And, it's still that awful feeling that you get, but you're turning it into something that's used to help you navigate where you should be, or turning it into some sort of positive. The same thing with for example, your it's calculus for differential equation
Differential
professor.
equations.
Yeah. But you went on to get a master's in statistics, right? And you still did that even while she was saying that you wouldn't be strong at this. I mean, to overcome that in spite of those things, to me, that's an incredible accomplishment, right? To be able to go
I
through
did
that.
fail her class though.
Well, that's I don't tell many people this, but I failed calculus in college.
I
And
mean, that's quite easy to it's not the easiest topic.
yeah, oh my goodness. But still I think that there's incredible things that we all do that we don't give ourselves enough credit for.
Yeah.
And the idea of focusing on your strengths, but also like focusing on the little wins, is how we keep going and how we keep evolving. And I will say, even though it was at your kind of lowest time where you went and you apprenticed at the bakery, I think that's a really intelligent thing to do that people can learn from, right? It wasn't like you're like, oh, I'm quitting this job, I'm going to go work at a bakery without having experienced that lifestyle. You went and you tested it out, right?
Yeah.
You thought about it, you like did a little A/B test, right? And then you made a decision based on that. It wasn't this whole it wasn't like a wholesale emotional decision. It was a very intelligent, like premeditated, hey, like, am I going to do this? And I think a lot of us, we're prone to make like maybe not that rational decisions when we're at our low points. I would say anyone who's facing imposter syndrome, facing a pivot or career, is like, test things out. Even if you're looking to get into data science, like, experiment with it. Like, you can learn some stuff for free. You can see if you like it or not. If you don't like data science after experimenting with it, like, probably shouldn't be a career for you, right?
Yeah. But also I will add to that, that definitely testing things is important, because even if it's something completely different than what you actually want to do or what you're doing right now, the learnings you get from it are transferable anyway. So there are loads of learning from baking that are transferable to data science, or the following the process and putting things in place. Preparing your data, you have to prepare the ingredients before. So all this is linked, and I feel like in every life experience there is a learning to be taken. So I love reflection on these kind of things to make sure that you have time to process everything.
I love the idea of allegories from our the other things that we do to data. I actually made a video about how cooking is like data science.
I need to
Quite
check
some
that
time.
out.
Yeah. It's one of the most fun ones I made. It isn't exactly, my cooking skills have evolved quite significantly since then. I love to cook, so maybe my big thing right now is making pizza. I bought a pizza oven. I make the dough fresh and stuff, so it's very, very exciting. So
Wow,
we
yummy.
can exchange tips on the baking versus pizza making front.
Okay.
um Before we move on from sort of your working career, you've described how you made some changes in how at work that have essentially transformed your value to the company and your feeling of your role in that space. What are the tangible things the tangible adjustments that you made, especially as an introvert, that made you a lot more effective in your role? I myself am quite extroverted, and so the things that like might work for me to be successful might not work for someone who's as introverted to be successful. And I'm really interested in teasing out that differentiation.
Yeah, I guess this is a really tough question. It depends on
Sorry to put you on the spot.
what aspect of the job you're trying to progress in, I guess. So what happened is, in my mind, so data science is a very poorly defined career path, I want to say. And it's both a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So at the time, for me, it was a bad thing, because I had this idea of my mind of what a data scientist should be doing and how they should behave, and really ticking boxes. And I was feeling like I wasn't ticking the boxes. And what happened is I started again this reflection of, okay, what does it mean for me, Karen, to be a data scientist? And what can I change in my role to fit that description that I have of a data scientist? And that's what I started to do. So before, it was all about, oh, you need to know R and Python, and I code SAS and SQL. So I was feeling very out of place. And I know a bit of R, but it's not my go-to language. And I was, okay, I need to learn this, I need to learn this. And then I realized, actually, there is another aspect of the role, which is all around, consulting. Um, Something I'm really good at is helping people progress and learn things and get to where they want to be. Hence the moment where I asked to be a manager, because I said, well, I'm going to feel at my strongest point in my career is if I have someone that I can help develop. And that person will probably have better technical skills than I have, but I will be able to get them to this position and help them to advise on data science problems and data analytics problems. So having these moments of thinking, okay, how am I going to do that? What data science means for me was very important. Asking for help. I remember being as an introvert, I was not the most outgoing person. So I am not shy, but I'm an introvert. So if I'm with my friends, you're going to hear me laugh, you're going to hear me talk, probably nonstop. But most of the time, I like to be in my own world, thinking, reading a book. And when I spend a lot of time with people, I just get exhausted. And at work, it's that all the time. And I'm in a commercial facing role, so it was quite intense. And that the problem I had was that I wasn't as performant in a client meeting as I should have been. And I remember this lady who was at the time working as a sales director at the company in a meeting. So I was listening like a mouse. This is how bad I was. I was in the meeting. So it was an online meeting a few years back. I was in the meeting. They had not noticed I was there, and it wasn't that many people. So in the meeting, she was saying, oh, so we have the analytics team and I would like to take them to meetings to support analytics matter. I don't feel like Karen would be comfortable to talk, and I don't feel like I can take her to a meeting to be able to explain analytics to a client. I work in analytics. This is bad. And I was in the meeting and I was thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? So what happened is that was a Friday. I got off the call and I was feeling, what am I going to do? So on Monday morning, I went to her and I said, I was in that meeting. This is what you said. I want to understand why. And it was all about, not expressing, not answering the question straight away. I have this thing where when I don't know, I just say, I don't know. Doesn't work that well with clients sometimes.
Yeah, well, that I mean, I think that's a good thing from a data science perspective, right? You don't want to shoot fluff at people. I think
Yeah, but I guess there is a way of saying I don't know that that's not as direct.
I think that's fine with your team on data science, not client facing. Very, very true.
Yeah, so I told her, okay, listen, I want to get better. Can you help me? And she helped me develop these communication skills that I did not have. And running my podcast was part of this learning journey and this development. So it basically forced me to talk to people I had never spoken to in the past, ask them questions, trying to find out, things that are unsaid, because this is very important. Sometimes you have a client telling you something and what they need is something completely different. So really being able to talk to different people coming from different areas and trying to find out what it is that they're doing helped me from that perspective. Does that answer your question?
No, it absolutely does. I think something really incredible that you described there. Well, there are two things. So there are a lot more than that, but the first thing that I really took away is that I love the origin of the podcast in that front, is that you're talking to people, right? You're trying to improve your communication ability, those types of things. Honestly, that's one of the main reasons I started the podcast. I started my content and making YouTube videos, is because I had this interview, and essentially it was a question prompt on the screen and I had to record myself talking to it. And they let you record it twice and you watch it back each time. And I looked at myself in the recording and I said, oh my God, that, like, I would never hire that person. I think I'm fine in a conversation, like I'm animated, whatever it might be. But when talking to a camera, which I thought at the time, like, hey, that could be an important skill, I was a robot. I, like, again, never would have hired that person. And I said, well, how do I work on that skill? And I was like, oh, maybe I can make videos, or maybe I can learn to do some of these things. And I improved that skill dramatically. And then I was like, okay, well, I heard myself talk. I'd been doing more public speaking, and I was like, wow, I said a lot. Had a lot of filler words. I sounded kind of awkward. It wasn't smooth. How could I also improve that skill? Well, talk to people, get on a podcast. You can do
Yeah.
those types of things. And I really love the idea that you can go in and help yourself improve in a skill area while also creating value for other people, while also producing content or building a brand or any of these things. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can help yourself and help other people at the same time, which is so, so cool. I
Agree.
also I also think that from from your experience interviewing a lot of different guests, you also realize how there is no stereotypical data scientist, right? Everyone has such a different, unique background. Everyone has such different hobbies, even, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it blows my mind, and that was something very freeing for me. Is that okay? This mold that I had created in my mind of a data scientist that I don't fit, it just doesn't exist based on all the people that I've interviewed. Right? They're all so different.
Yeah, and it's so important to realize that. It's so important. But I have to say, it's very mean to ask you to do a video for an interview. I don't think I would like that.
I did not like it. I just, by some miracle, I was able to get to the next round of that interview,
Oh,
and then I realized I didn't want the job. So I tortured myself, and then I realized I didn't want to do
but
it.
you got
Uh,
something from it. You have
yeah.
your podcast now and your YouTube channel. But I have to say, so there is Margot, I cannot pronounce her name, I'm very sorry. She's the founder of Women in Data Science from Stanford University. And she says on a podcast, and I cannot remember, I need to review my references. I cannot remember the podcast. So she said something that applies to that. So she said when she wants to learn something, so she's a lecturer and a researcher. When she wants to learn something, she volunteers to teach it. So we can't all volunteer to teach something, but just, learning by doing again. So you want to improve these speaking in front of the camera skills, you're speaking in front of the camera. And I felt that this was a great advice as well.
Yeah, I could not agree with that more. I mean, there's so many things that uh, that I've used YouTube or the podcast to push myself to do. You have a lot larger community that's accountable to you, and if you make a video on a topic, you want to make sure it's right,
Yeah.
right? Especially if a reasonable number of people are watching it, because uh, you know, I think as anyone that produces things and puts stuff out there, like you have a responsibility to vet yourself, and that responsibility can make you a better learner as well, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear also a little bit more about the podcast itself. I think that for for the female audience or anyone in the audience, they can obviously learn a lot about the different struggles that people have across the multiple gender sphere, right? And I read a book by Adam Grant recently called oh my goodness, what's it called? Well, it's about how to change your mind or something like that. Um, and it talks a lot about the gender differences uh, regarding work, regarding imposter syndrome, and those types of things. And I'm a huge believer that looking at how different people respond to adversity, how different people handle different scenarios is really valuable, because if you're only thinking about how you approach a problem, you're going to keep approaching problems the same way your
The
entire
same way,
life,
yeah.
right? So I'd love to hear more about the onus on that, and what you've learned from that sort of podcasting journey outside of what we just described.
Yeah. Right. So the podcast is called Women in Data, and it's the one with the red logo. And
And I'll link to it below. Don't worry.
what happened is when I was having my massive imposter syndrome moment, I found the Women in Data community. So I had been part of the community for a while, but I had never been very involved. And right that year, when it's like it feels like everything was aligning. And right that year they started to have more events and smaller events. So before they were doing one big event every year, and then that year, so that was 2019, they started doing smaller events regularly, so which meant that I wanted to get to know more people so I could network. It's easier to network when there are 100 people in the room than when there are 1,000 people in the room. And that made me a bit more visible in the community, and I was able to find loads of people who were happy to share their knowledge and their experience. And it's just mind-blowing how willing people are to help you overcome problems and talk about how they've done it. And this is amazing. I think this is one of the things I love the most about the data science community, is how open people are and how willing they are to share information. And at that time, I was also listening to a podcast called Squiggly Career Podcast, which is all about helping you navigate your career. And I was like, podcasts are amazing. I want to do a podcast as well. So I approached women in data and told them, hey, can we do a podcast together? I would love to give a voice to these amazing women I spoke to at your event and make their knowledge available to everyone else. Because what happened is, if you're not in London, if you can't get a ticket to the event, then you miss on the opportunity to talk to these women. And very often when you go online, you find people who are very, very high profile, but there are people who are a bit less high profile, but amazing at what they do, that have amazing experience. And I wanted to give them a voice as well. So what we're doing on the podcast is I interview women who work in data. So it's not only data scientists, analysts, engineers, data working in data governance, people who don't have any technical expertise, but just talking about their career in data, challenges they've faced, how they've overcome that. And sometimes they want to talk about a bit more specific topics. So we've had episodes on geospatial analytics, for example, what it is, how to get there, things like that. So it's really sharing all the knowledge that surrounds careers in data and bringing more transparency in careers in the field, really, because as you said, that there is not, it's not a one size fit all, and it's not one box. And showing that there are different ways of being a data professional is very important for me, and so that's what we're trying to do. And it's been running for a year and a half now, and the learnings from that and the people I've met is just so great. I spoke with women I would have never had the opportunity to speak with if I didn't have the podcast. And one of my favorite episodes is, I always say two. So I have one with Sumedha Menon, who is working at Google in the UK. And she's talking about her career from data analytics to data science and giving tips on how to do that. Because data science, people have been talking about it's quite recent, right, compared to data analytics. And from there are some people who have a data science background before it was called data science, and they feel like, oh, maybe I'm not doing proper data science. So having her talking about all the steps she took and the reflection she had was quite impactful. And also Lizzie Harris from Sainsbury's, who is oh my God, she's just like a ray of sunshine when you talk to her. And she was talking about career resilience and basically telling the listeners, you are not a job title. So stop thinking that if this job title is not the right job title, it's not the job for you. Just really look into what the role is about and craft your career from that, rather than identifying yourself to words in a paper. Really. And yeah.
Oh my God. I love that so much, that you can go in and have these really awesome, intimate conversations with people. And I never intended it to be a form of networking, but what I've found is that it is, in my mind, probably the most effective way
Yeah.
of getting to know someone, having a meaningful relationship, like a meaningful conversation, and developing a relationship with someone. Because, how often when we're just doing normal networking, do you sit uninterrupted for an hour and really talk with someone? Right? You really get to know them. You get to understand what makes them tick. You get to hear their story. You get to experience like who that other person is. And like, what more would you want out of networking? Right? I mean, like, maybe you want something at the end, but like, at least in my mind, networking is about connecting with other people. And I legitimately get to do that more than once a week with a couple other people that are absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that is one of the best possible learning experiences, but it's also like, it's just like an enriching and great time. And I'm I'm super grateful I got into the podcasting as well, because you got to have these great conversations every week. I mean, I think before I started podcasting, like I probably had 10 conversations a year that I felt were as enriching as a podcast. And now I have at least one a week.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about quality of life and learning and compounding, whether it's you're interested in a career or whatever it is, the amount that you can take away from other people is is limitless. And I'm not saying everyone should go start a podcast. What I am saying though is that having deep, meaningful conversations with people and finding a way to have those. You can't just like go up to someone and be like, "Hey, you want to talk for an hour with me?" and like take that time out of your schedule. No, like if there's a purpose to it, it's like, "Hey, I'll interview you for the podcast. You'll be able to share your story and get it to an audience." That's a really great reason to have that conversation for other
Yeah.
people. Um, but having more of those deep and rich conversations, I think, would benefit everyone's lives.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you said, not everybody can do a podcast. Something I found very useful pre-COVID and pre-everything moving online was, when you go to an event and you talk to people, some people you would have connected with more than others. So invite them for a coffee chat in a couple of weeks, and that's how you get to have the meaningful conversation. Because you're right, if you go to an event, it's always very superficial, very quick, and everybody's maybe thinking about, oh, I need to talk to this person and this person, and also thinking of the drinks. So it makes it a bit more complicated.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, something I've also really enjoyed, which I didn't realize it, is how technology can disrupt meaningful conversation. If you're even at a coffee chat, sometimes like the other person will just be on their phone the whole time. And you're like, really? One of my favorite things about the podcast is that like it's really rude on the podcast to have the phone out, so no one does, right? And so it's like, oh, great stuff. So the last thing I wanted to touch on, if you still have time, is doing things that are inherently you outside of your career. You talked a lot about your love for baking, right? I obviously enjoy cooking. I enjoy playing golf. I started to really like training jujitsu, which has been an incredible release for me. How important are those things for you to be able to do a good job at your work? At least for me, I find that I would be like awful at everything else that I did if I didn't have those other things that were so different to kind of ground me.
I wouldn't be able to do anything if I did not have my it's not even side things, because as you said, it's things that are part of me. Sorry. That I I grew up doing things on the side. So I started athletics when I was 10, and I never had one moment where I did not have that thing on the side that I was doing that was a massive part of my life. And in fact, when I stopped athletics, I had this moment where I was like, I don't know what to do now. I have so much time. What am I going to do? And that's when I picked up baking. I was just so desperate to find something to do, because you can't just be work, 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 and you need to have something that you identify with and that helps you unload a bit. Because after a long week at work, or even a long day, every day I do something a bit different from than work. For the mental well-being, it's very important to have something else. And it also adds some, it depends on how far you go to it. So when I do something, I hardly go, oh, I'm going to do that 5 minutes. I go all in. I want to know everything. So I even studied a bit the chemistry of the ingredients when it comes to baking. Well, I guess I'm a bit of a geek sometimes, but it was just, all these things, different things you do with sugar, because like there are 3 types of meringues, because you prepare it a different way and it comes with a different texture. How does that happen? And I think this is valuable for looking for jobs as well. So because you go for an interview and then people have so many people have these incredible technical skills. So what makes you stand apart from the crowd? What makes you stand out is these small things that you do on the side, and you show that you have a personality. You're not just someone coding, you're more than that. And showing this to recruiters for me is incredible. I know I've tried to have conversations around hobbies in interviews. So for people I was interviewing, and some of them were feeling a bit uncomfortable because it's not work related. And I'm thinking, but I'm going to spend 40 hours with you at the company every week. Hopefully we can talk about something else than work, and I would like to know about your hobbies and all these things. But the learnings you get from that as well is were incredible. So I mentioned about baking, the way that there is a process and that you can apply this to data science, and knowing that this is where I want to be, what are the different steps to go there, so applying that in your work. But the biggest learnings I've got from things on the side were from athletics, because this was such a massive part of my life. But everything, as in dealing with failure, because when you run you don't win all the time.
Yeah, tell me, the golf, if you're the best in the world, you win like 5% of the time.
Exactly.
Right. And I was
Exactly.
not the best in the world, let's put it that way.
So dealing with failure, being able to organize your time, this is very important when you work in data, because you have people coming with loads of questions and you have to prioritize things. So having something on the side really helps you prioritize and organize your time better. And these are some of the biggest learnings I've had, really.
It's funny that you say that. So by doing something, I found that by taking time to do other things that I enjoy, I actually feel like there's more time in the day, which is like paradoxical, right? You're spending more time to get more time. And I've always felt like I have a bandwidth, like an amount of work I can do in a day, right? And like that slowly, it's like a gas tank, right? And it slowly goes down. And then I have this other tank of like leisure that I have to do. And as I go through that, the work one fills up faster
Yeah,
than if I just did nothing. And
because it renews your energy as well. So, and you end up doing, because you have new energy, you end up doing things much faster and more efficiently as well. And I mean, if you're all day coding, you're going to tire out and you're not going to be able to do it anymore. So taking a break, doing something a bit different, and you come back with so much more energy that I think it's priceless.
I could not agree with you more. I think that's something that uh, I I love to see also on a resume or whatever it is, when people combine their things that they enjoy with the data occasionally. I think it's great to have them be completely separate. But at the same time, if I see someone that's really passionate about something and they start trying to quantify it with data or collecting information on it, whatever it might be, to me that tells me a lot about them, right? That they're that passionate about that thing that they want to understand it better. You were just talking about how you go in depth into the chemistry and the food. You'd love this YouTuber. He's a French guy. He does all these tests with a bunch of I'll have to find the name and send it
Yeah,
to you. But
please do.
he does A/B tests on like how many times you should fold the puff pastry. He like folded one like a million times or something, and wanted to see what the difference of the textures were.
Oh
So
my
he does
God.
all these different tests and stuff. It's incredible. I fascinating to me. But yeah, I love the idea that people are multidimensional, right? And that's what makes them interesting. If you go to a party and someone is just talking about their work the whole time, probably not going to want to talk with that person for
Mm.
too long, right? And inherently, that diversity of experience, it it helps people adapt to multiple different challenges or problems that they face, and that's a really good thing in the work sphere, right? If we're talking to someone like you and I'm interviewing you and you have a lot of life experience, you have a lot of adversity that you've overcome, you've had a lot of different types of experiences, I'd probably be more likely to hire you knowing that you could tackle something that you hadn't seen before than someone who's only been on this very linear track that from their
Yeah,
entire career. experience. And I think that people don't highlight that enough, because it is, again, from a hiring perspective, a very valuable thing, and from a a life perspective, a very like powerful thing as well.
Yeah, and it's the curiosity as well, because we will never say it enough how important curiosity is in our career, and showing that you're curious outside of this world as well is what shows that curiosity is natural to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Karen, those are all the questions I had. How can people learn more about you? Where can they find you on the internet? And do you have anything closing to say?
Yeah, I am the worst influencer you will find around. So the only place you can you can find me is on LinkedIn. I tried Instagram and other social networks. I just can't do it. But Karen Jean-Francois on LinkedIn, and that will be me. And I reply to messages. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or just want to connect and have a chat.
Excellent. I will link your LinkedIn in the description below. I'll also share a link to your podcast as well. Definitely, everyone go check it out. A lot of really awesome guests on there. Unfortunately, I probably will never make an appearance because there's a there's a line in the sand associated with that one. But it's still such a pleasure having you in today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm so excited for everyone to hear this and gain some real wisdom around their career and their life.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope that was useful.